Bonjour. So I must apologize because that's how far my French goes. And besides that, I'm gonna be brief, so you won't suffer too much. Anyway, the Brazilian systems that fight the irregularity in the acts inside and outside government and the actions of his agents consist of an anti-corruption legislation bloc. The Brazilian law imposes to the public officials of any level or rank that they ensure the strict observancy of the constitutional principles of legality, impersonality, morality, and publicity in dealing with topics regarding their public functions. Nowadays, considering the public institutions, there's a national engagement action to combat corruption in Brazil. Economically, Brazil is very well positioned in the global wealth ranking. Of the current crisis, the country is in the sixth place, taking into account the world GDP, only after the United States of America, China, Japan, Germany, and France. And even in the present slump, is in the ninth place, being beyond these, behind England, Russia, and India. Moreover, the national economic wealth should be associated with the institutional advance, and there's no doubt that this progress necessarily involves the fight against corruption, that is, in my opinion, a systematic plague engendering in the emerging economies. What is happening in Brazil right now, thanks to the domestic Federal Bureau of Investigation and the government transparency with a coordinated operation, is the unveil and dismantle of a corruption scheme within the main Brazilian oil company Petrobras. The company loss, considering bribery so far, recorded an unbelievable amount of 10 billion reais, approximately $2.5 billion, which would involve around 1 to 5% of the contracts signed in recent years. Of that amount mentioned, the authorities were able to recover so far, with legal and administrative suits, the amount of 1.8 billion reais, almost $450 million. This achievement is the result of the instrumental regarding the combat of corruption in criminal, civil, and administrative level that Brazil structured. The criminal environment punished both passive and active corruption acts, provision contained in the Penal Codex. The Brazilian Government Agency for Law Enforcement and Prosecution of Crimes is the only legitimate to prosecute using a legal instrument called the unconditional public lawsuit. By the criminal legal framework, it is considered passive corruption, seek or take to themselves or others, directly or indirectly, even outside the function or before you take it, but because her improper advantage or accepting the promise of such advantage, the penalty to this type of crime is confinement from 2 to 12 years and a fine. Active corruption, by turns, consists in offers or promise improper advantage to public employee to make him practice, omit, or delay any official act. This kind of bribery by the law is a crime and it is punished with incarceration from 2 to 12 years and a fine. Currently, with the accountability in the criminal sphere, the public official may also be civilly liable. This is a consequence of the transparency of the government, of Brazilian government. In 1992, emerged the statute known as the administrative misconduct. In fact, this act has become one of the main instruments in the fight against corruption, as has the power to demand the damage compensation, loss of public office, fines, and suspension of political rights for up to 8 years. However, the Brazilian experience in fighting corruption showed that the law was resent of a specific legal instrument were to curb the corrupting companies. Therewith comes the section of the federal law number 12,846 of 2013, known as Anti-Corruption Law, aimed to punish corrupting legal entities for their act against the public, national, or foreign administration. This accountability of the corporation did not exclude the individual liability of its directors or officer or any person, author, co-author, or participant in the act of corruption. Corruption held liable for the acts of corruption will be punished with a fine never lower than the advantage obtained. Furthermore, the application of this administrative penalty does not exclude the possibility of accountability in court except as expressly provided in the eventual execution of a lenience agreement. It's good to see that Brazil, thanks to the high level of the legal activity, has settled in the inspiration of French legislation, reason why I take this opportunity to pay my respect to the University of Paris 1 Panthéon-Sorbonne, particularly to the Professor William Gillet, Chair, Director of the Americas, and my advisor on postdoctoral degree, that there's an effectively a legal framework for combat corruption that we can say we can call it safely anti-corruption bloc. There's no doubt that the first effort to combat corruption include the assistance of providing information to the Brazilian government agency for law enforcement and prosecution of crime, direct or indirectly throughout complaints by third parties, is government transparency. And it's worth to mention that Brazil has a transparency law number 12,527 of November of 2011. It's up to the government agencies and entities subject to the applicable rules and specific procedures to ensure transparency information management, providing broad access to it and its disclosure. More than that, the government is obligated to the information protection and also publicity by ensuring their availability, authenticity, and integrity. This piece of legislation set forth the procedure to be observed by federal, state, federal district, and municipalities in order to ensure access to information under the Constitution. It is subordinate to the regime of this law, the public bodies members of the direct and indirect administration of the executive, legislative, and judiciary. The law of transparency also applies to private non-profit organizations that receive to perform the public interest actions public resources. By this standard, is intended to ensure the fundamental right of the access to information and should be materialized in accordance with the basic principles of public administration and with the following guidelines. First, the compliance and advertisement as a general rule and the secrecy as an exception. Second, dissemination of information of public interest regardless of requests. Third, use of media made possible by information technology. Fourth, promoting the development of transparency in public administration culture. And five, development of social control of public administration. By the Brazilian law, it's considered information, the data, processed or not, which can be used for production and transmission of knowledge contained in any media format. In this matter, the Brazilian law explaining all of this scenario, and we must understand that Brazilian law sets some parameters, three of them. The first one is the availability of information that is considered on the quality of the information that can be known and used by individuals, equipment, or authorized system. Second, the authenticity is the quality of information that has been produced, shipped, received, or modified in certain individuals, equipment, or systems. And in third and final place, the integrity. It's the quality of information unmodified, including as the origin, transit, or destination. The law recognized the duty of the state to guarantee the right of information, which will be franchising franchised by objective and streamlined procedures in a transparent, clear, and easy to understand. Therefore, the government transparency is a powerful means to curb and combat corruption, is hugely more effective when the population in general is more connected to the virtual reality. This way, the information society indeed is an as auspicious environment considering the fight against corruption and should be expanded by digital inclusion covering the whole population. The fight against corruption should no longer be exclusively on the monopoly of a government institution, but it needs to turn out to be democratized and also legitimates to join the battlefield of this struggle. Ordinary citizens aim to end of this despicable and illegal damage to the treasury. Finally, I believe that Brazil must pass a piece of legislation that enables any of the people who feel the citizen's requirement, that is the vote, that can be implement action or even a legal suit to combat corruption, thereby ensuring a greater efficiency. The citizen may rub shoulders to the necessary fight alongside the office of the public prosecutor. Thank you very much.